There are moments, rare, undeniable moments, when something inside you pauses. Not because you chose to stop, but because something greater has interrupted your normal flow. And this right here is one of those moments. He is speaking now, not loudly, not forcefully, but with a presence that presses gently against your spirit. And the voice, steady and unshakable, carries the authority of heaven itself. It is the voice of Archangel Michael, and he is not speaking to the crowd, he is speaking to you. He says, pay attention. Do not scroll past this moment. Do not dismiss what you feel rising inside your chest right now. This is not coincidence. This is a summons. And suddenly something clicks. Because haven't you felt it? That strange tension between where you are and where you know you're supposed to be. The way you've worked hard, stayed faithful, remained patient, yet somehow things never fully aligned the way they should have. The doors that almost opened but didn't. The opportunities that came close but slipped away. The money that should have stayed but disappeared just when you needed it most. It left you wondering, am I doing something wrong? Or deeper still, is something being held back from me? And that question, that quiet, lingering question, is exactly why this message found you. Because what you thought would delay was actually divine positioning. What you thought was loss was actually protection. And what you thought was bad timing was heaven refusing to release something prematurely, because you were being prepared for something far greater than what you were asking for. Archangel Michael steps forward now, his presence firm yet protective, and he reveals a truth that shifts everything. You were not overlooked. You were selected. Yes, selected. Out of your family. Out of your environment. Out of everyone who faced similar struggles, you were chosen. Not because you were the strongest. Not because you were the smartest. But because you remained sensitive to truth when others hardened their hearts. Because even in your confusion you didn't completely disconnect. Even in your frustration you still hoped. Even in your lowest moment something inside you refused to give up entirely. And heaven saw that. Heaven marked that. Heaven recorded every silent prayer, every moment of endurance, every time you kept going when quitting would have been easier. And now the time of response has arrived. There is a shift happening, not next year, not someday, now. The transfer is being initiated in the spiritual realm. Resources are being reassigned. Doors are being unlocked. Paths that were blocked are beginning to clear, not slowly, but suddenly. But here is what makes this moment so critical. Not everyone will recognize it. Not everyone will be ready for it. And not everyone will receive what is being released. That's why this message feels urgent. That's why you felt pulled to stop here. That's why something inside you is saying, this is for me. Because it is. Archangel Michael speaks again, his tone unwavering. This is your notice. The season you have been in is ending. The weight you have been carrying is lifting. And what was held back from you is now being redirected toward you. But there is one question that remains. Will you receive it consciously, or will you miss it while still thinking like the version of you that struggled? Because the shift has already begun, and what comes next will require you to see yourself differently, to think differently, to move differently, to believe at a level you've never reached before. This is not just about money. This is about alignment. This is about identity. This is about stepping into the version of you that was always meant to carry abundance without fear, without guilt, without limitation. And the moment you truly understand that, everything changes. The transfer doesn't just arrive around you. It begins to flow through you. So stay here. Stay aware. Stay ready. Because what is about to unfold in the next section will explain why the struggle had to last this long, and why it's about to end in a way you never expected. Type "I am ready to receive" in the comments if this message has found you at the right time. Blessing code 1111 is now activated around your life. There is something you must understand now. Something that may challenge everything you believed about your past, because what you called struggle, heaven calls preparation. He is speaking again, steady and unwavering, and his presence does not carry sympathy. It carries truth. Archangel Michael steps closer into your awareness, and his voice cuts through every doubt you have ever held about your journey. He says, "You keep asking why it was so hard, but you never asked what it was making you into." And suddenly, the weight of your past begins to shift. Because if you are honest, it wasn't just difficulty. It was a pattern. A cycle that seemed to follow you no matter how hard you tried to break free. You worked, you planned, you sacrificed, and still, something always interrupted the flow. Money came, but it didn't stay. Opportunities appeared, but they didn't stabilize. You moved forward, but it felt like something invisible kept pulling you back. And that frustration, it wasn't small. It built over time, quietly, deeply, until it turned into a question you may have never fully spoken out loud. Why does it seem harder for me than it should be? But here's the truth that changes everything. It was never harder because you were less favored. It was harder because you were being trusted with more. Archangel Michael reveals something now that most people never see. He shows that there are two types of seasons. The visible season, where everything looks like progress, and the hidden season, where everything feels like delay. And the hidden season is the one most people misunderstand. Because in that hidden season you were not being denied. You were being developed. Every moment you had to stretch money taught you discipline that overflow requires. Every time something fell through, it sharpened your discernment. Every delay forced you to become resourceful. Every disappointment strengthened your emotional control. You thought you were just trying to survive, but heaven was training you to manage something greater than survival. Because here is what most people never realize: if the wealth had come earlier, it would not have stayed. If the doors had opened sooner, you would not have been ready to sustain what was behind them. If everything had worked out when you wanted it to, you would have entered abundance with the same mindset that struggled to maintain stability. And that would have destroyed what was meant to elevate you. So heaven held it back, not to punish you, but to protect the version of you that was still forming. Archangel Michael speaks again, and his words carry a weight that cannot be ignored. He says, "You were not delayed. You were being built into someone who cannot be broken by what is coming." And now, think about this carefully. You have learned things through struggle that cannot be taught in comfort. You know how to move when resources are limited. You know how to think when options are few. You know how to endure when nothing is guaranteed. That kind of strength, that kind of awareness, that kind of resilience, it cannot be bought. It cannot be borrowed. It can only be built. And you built it even when you didn't realize you were. But there is something else you need to see, something deeper. Not everything that happened was just about development. Some of it was separation. Because along the way, certain people revealed themselves. Some walked away. Some changed. Some showed sides of themselves you never expected. And at the time, it felt like loss. It felt like betrayal. It felt like something breaking apart. But now, Archangel Michael reveals the truth behind it. They could not go where you are going. The hidden season didn't just shape you, it filtered your environment. It removed those who were connected to your struggle but not aligned with your elevation. They exposed mindsets that would have conflicted with your future. It broke attachments that would have drained what is now being prepared for you. So what felt like isolation was actually alignment. What felt like things falling apart was actually things being cleared. And now, you stand at the edge of something different. Because the hidden season has an ending. It is not permanent. It was never meant to be your identity. It was a phase, a necessary one, but a temporary one. And Archangel Michael makes this clear as he speaks one final time in this moment. The training is complete. The mindset has been forged. The endurance has been proven. And now what was held back is ready to be released. This is where everything begins to shift. Because the next season will not look like the last one. The struggle will not define the outcome. The delay will not determine the result. Instead, everything you went through is about to justify itself in a way that will make sense only after it happens. But you must hold this truth firmly: you did not suffer for nothing. You were being prepared for something you could not have handled before but are now ready to receive. And in the next section you will understand what is happening right now in the unseen realm and why this transfer is already in motion, even if you cannot see it yet. Type "I understand the process" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 2222 is now activated around your journey. Something is happening right now and you can feel it, even if you cannot explain it. There hath been a shift, subtle, yet undeniable, not in what you see around you, but in what you feel within you. A restlessness that does not come from anxiety but from anticipation. A quiet sense that something is about to change even though nothing has visibly changed yet. This is not your imagination. This is movement in the unseen realm. Archangel Michael speaks again, and his voice carries a deeper intensity now, as if time itself has become more urgent. He says, what you are waiting for has already been initiated. What you are expecting has already begun moving toward you. And this is where your understanding must expand. Because the physical world is always the last place where change becomes visible. Before anything shifts in your bank account, it shifts in the spiritual realm. Before doors open in your life, they are unlocked in the unseen. Before opportunities reach your hand, they are reassigned in places you cannot see. Right now there is a reassignment happening. Resources that were once delayed are being redirected. Connections that were once blocked are being realigned. Decisions are being made, not by chance, not by coincidence, but by divine orchestration that is positioning things in your favor. You may not see the movement, but it is happening. Archangel Michael reveals a powerful truth in this moment. He shows that there are forces that once resisted your progress. Not people alone, but spiritual resistance, patterns, limitations, cycles that kept things from flowing freely in your life. And for a long time, those forces had influence. That is why things felt stuck. That is why effort did not always equal results. That is why timing never seemed to align the way it should have. But now something has shifted. Authority has been given. And when divine authority is released, resistance begins to lose its power. Michael says, the hold has been broken. The delay hath been lifted. What stood in your way is no longer permitted to remain. This is not symbolic. This is structural. Something that once blocked the flow no longer has permission to block it. And because of that, movement begins. But here is where many people miss the moment. They continue thinking like nothing has changed. They continue expecting delay because delay is what they are used to. They continue doubting because doubt became their defense mechanism. They continue hesitating because hesitation once protected them from disappointment. But now that mindset becomes the only thing that can slow down what is already in motion. Because when the spiritual shift happens, you must shift with it. You must begin to see differently before you can receive differently. Archangel Michael makes this clear. He says, do not respond to this new season with the expectations of your old one. What is coming will not behave like what you have experienced before. And this is where awareness becomes critical. You may start noticing small changes first. Conversations that feel different. Ideas that come unexpectedly. Opportunities that seem simple at first but carry unusual potential. These are not random. These are entry points. Because when a transfer begins, it does not always arrive in one dramatic moment. It often begins with strategic openings that lead to larger shifts. But you must recognize them. You must not dismiss what looks small, because what looks small may be the beginning of something significant. And here's something even deeper you need to understand. This transfer is not just about money moving toward you. It is about alignment positioning you to receive it. Because wealth without alignment creates confusion. Wealth without clarity creates mismanagement. Wealth without purpose creates instability. So before everything fully manifests, your thinking, your awareness, your perception all begin to elevate. That is why you feel different. That is why you are noticing things you didn't notice before. That is why certain environments no longer feel the same. You are not imagining it. You are shifting. And as you shift, what is coming toward you becomes compatible with who you are becoming. Archangel Michael speaks one more time in this moment, and his words carry both assurance and urgency. The transfer is not approaching. It is already in motion. The question is not whether it will arrive, but whether you will recognize it when it does. So stay aware. Stay open. Stay aligned with what you feel rising inside you. Because what is happening right now cannot be stopped. It can only be received or missed. And in the next section you will understand why the cycles of lack in your life are about to end permanently, and why this moment marks the breaking of something that has followed your bloodline for far too long. Type "I see the shift" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 3333 is now activated around your life. As this shift begins to unfold, understand this: every time this message reaches a soul, a light is ignited in a place that once felt dark. This is not just a video. This is a vessel, a channel through which divine truth flows to those who are ready to receive it. Scripture declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." And in this moment, that is not just a verse. It is a living exchange happening in real time. If your spirit is stirred and you feel the call to act, this is your moment to sow into something greater than yourself. Your support through Super Thanks or through the PayPal link in the description is not just giving. It is planting seeds into lives that are waiting for transformation. And as you release, know this: what you sow now returns multiplied, flowing back into your life in ways you cannot yet see. So step into this moment with intention. Act now. Become part of the movement that is awakening souls. There is something deeper you must confront now, something that goes beyond your personal experience, something that has been quietly influencing your life long before you were even aware of it. Because this was never just about you. This pattern, this cycle of financial strain, instability, and near misses, it did not begin with you. It moved through your bloodline. It echoed through generations. It repeated itself in different forms, different situations, different faces, but the core of it remained the same. Laugh. Not always extreme poverty, but limitation, restriction. Just enough to survive, but never enough to expand. Just enough to get by, but never enough to feel secure. Just enough to move forward, but always with something pulling you back. And for a long time it felt normal. It felt like this is just how things are. It felt like this is what life does. It felt like something you had to accept rather than something you were meant to break. But now that understanding is being challenged. Archangel Michael steps forward again. and his presence carries a different kind of authority now, not just revealing, but declaring. He says, "What repeated before you will not repeat through you." And those words, they are not symbolic. They are final. Because what you have been experiencing is not just circumstance. It is a pattern that was allowed to continue because no one before you disrupted it at the level required to end it. Until now. Because something about you is different. You questioned what others accepted. You felt discomfort where others adapted. You refused, even quietly, to fully settle into a life that felt limited. And that resistance, that internal refusal to accept less, that was not frustration. That was activation. It was the sign that you were never meant to carry what others carried. Archangel Michael reveals something now that changes how you see everything. He shows that generational patterns are not always broken by force, they are broken by awareness and alignment. And the moment you become aware of a pattern without agreeing to it, its power begins to weaken. For years, the pattern operated unnoticed. It influenced decisions. It limited what felt possible. But now it has been exposed. And what is exposed can no longer operate the same way. Michael says, the chain is not just weakening. It is breaking. And when a chain breaks, it does not partially release. It ends. This is why things have felt so intense at times. Why pressure increased before this moment. Why situations seemed to repeat in cycles, almost as if something was trying to reinforce itself before losing its hold completely. Because that is exactly what was happening. The final resistance always appears strongest right before it collapses. And now it is collapsing. But here is what you must understand clearly: when a pattern breaks, there is a moment of transition. A moment where the old way is no longer active, but the new way is not fully manifested yet. That moment is where you are now. And in that moment your mindset becomes critical. Because if you continue thinking from the perspective of lack, you unconsciously recreate what has already been broken. If you continue expecting limitation, you slow down the flow that is now available. If you continue identifying with struggle, you delay stepping into what has already been released. That is why Archangel Michael speaks with such clarity now. He says, do not carry the mindset of what has already ended. You are no longer operating under that pattern. This is where your identity must shift. You are not someone trying to escape lack. You are someone who has already been released from it. And that difference changes everything. Because when you operate from release instead of pursuit, your decisions change. You stop reacting from fear. You stop hesitating from doubt. You stop shrinking your expectations to match old experiences. Instead, you begin to move with a quiet certainty. A certainty that does not need external proof. A certainty that comes from knowing something has already shifted, even if it has not fully appeared yet. And as you move from that place, things begin to align. Not randomly, not unpredictably, but intentionally. Because now there is nothing holding it back. Archangel Michael speaks one final time in this moment, and his voice carries the authority of completion. The cycle has ended. The limitation has been removed. What once restricted you has no power over you anymore. So understand this clearly: you are not approaching freedom. You have entered it. And what comes next will not resemble what came before. Because the foundation itself has changed. And in the next section you will see why certain people and forces attempted to block what is now being released, and why their efforts could never succeed against what was divinely assigned to you. Type "the cycle is broken" in the comments if you receive this message. Lesson code 4444 is now activated around your life. There is a truth rising now, one that may feel uncomfortable at first, but necessary for you to fully step into what is being released over your life. Because not everything that delayed you was accidental. Not everything that slowed you down was natural. Some of it was resistance. And that resistance did not always come from obvious places. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and his presence carries a sharper clarity now, not to create fear, but to remove confusion. He says, "You must understand what stood against you, not to focus on it, but to finally detach from it." And this is where revelation begins. Because if you look back honestly, there were moments that did not make sense. Situations where things were moving forward, and then suddenly something shifted. Attitude changed. Support disappeared. Momentum collapsed without a clear reason. You may have explained it away at the time. You may have told yourself it was just timing. You may have assumed it was just bad luck. You may have chosen peace over questioning what felt off. But now you are being shown that there were deeper layers involved. Not always intentional in the way you might think, but real in their effect. Because sometimes resistance shows up through people who are not aligned with your growth. People who carry their own limitations, their own fears, their own unhealed patterns, and without realizing it, they project those limitations onto you. They question what you believe. They doubt what you see. They subtly discourage what you are trying to build. Not always directly, not always aggressively, but consistently enough to influence your momentum. Archangel Michael reveals something important here. He shows that not all opposition comes as confrontation. Some of it comes as subtle misalignment, energy that does not support expansion, conversations that pull you back into smaller thinking, environments that normalize limitation. And when you are surrounded by that long enough, it begins to affect your decisions. It makes you hesitate when you should move. It makes you question when you should trust. It makes you shrink when you should expand. And without realizing it, you begin to participate in your own delay. But here is the truth that sets you free, even with that resistance, even with that influence, even with those moments of hesitation. What was assigned to you could not be taken from you. Archangel Michael speaks firmly now. He says they could not stop what they did not control. And that is why every attempt to block you ultimately failed. It may have slowed things down. It may have created confusion. It may have delayed certain outcomes. But it could not cancel what was already written for you. Because your path was never dependent on their understanding. Your future was never dependent on their approval. Your abundance was never dependent on their agreement. And now that becomes clear. Because as the shift begins to manifest, you will start to see the difference between what was aligned and what was not. You will begin to recognize the moments where you felt drained instead of energized. The situations where you felt restricted instead of expanded. The connections that required you to lower your vision just to maintain harmony. And with that awareness comes separation. Not forced, not dramatic, but natural. Because once you see clearly, you cannot return to what kept you unclear. Archangel Michael reveals one more truth in this moment. He says exposure is not punishment. It is protection. You are not being shown these things to create resentment. You are being shown them so you no longer attach your future to what was never meant to support it. Because what is coming requires a different environment. It requires clarity. It requires alignment. It requires people, spaces, and decisions that match the level you are stepping into. And anything that does not match that level cannot move forward with you. That is not loss. That is precision. And this is why everything is beginning to make sense now. The delays, the disconnections, the moments that felt like things were falling apart. They were not random. They were part of the separation process that ensures what you are about to receive will not be compromised. Archangel Michael speaks one final time in this section, and his words carry a calm certainty. What was not aligned has already been removed or revealed. What remains is what can sustain what is coming. So release any confusion. Release any need to revisit what did not work. Release any attachment to what could not move forward, because it is no longer relevant to where you are going. You are not being blocked anymore. You are being cleared. And in the next section you will understand how quickly this shift can manifest and why the change you are about to experience will not follow the slow pattern of your past. Type "I release what no longer serves me" in the comments if you receive this message. Lesson code 5555 is now activated around your life. There is something about to happen that your past has not prepared you for, not because you are unready, but because it will not follow the pattern you have grown used to. For so long, everything in your life seemed to move slowly. Progress came in pieces. Results took time. Even when things improve, it felt gradual, measured, almost as if every step forward had to be earned through extended effort and patience. And because of that you adapted. You learned to expect slow change. You learned to brace for delay. You learned to measure progress in small increments. But now that expectation is about to be disrupted. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and there is a distinct shift in his tone. It is no longer just revealing or correcting, it is announcing. He says, what took long to prepare will not take long to manifest. And that truth, it changes everything about what you should expect next. Because the season you are entering does not operate by the same pace as the one you are leaving. The preparation was slow, but the release will be fast. The building was gradual, but the breakthrough will be sudden. The alignment took time, but the manifestation will feel accelerated. And this is where many people struggle to adjust, because when you have been conditioned by delay, sudden change can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But you must understand this clearly: speed does not mean instability. Sudden does not mean ungrounded. In fact, the reason it can happen quickly now is because everything that needed to be built internally has already been completed. Archangel Michael reveals this with clarity. He shows that what is coming toward you has been forming for a long time behind the scenes, outside of your visibility. Decisions, opportunities, connections, and resources have been aligning in ways you could not track, in timing you could not control. And now they are converging. He says, you are not waiting for it to begin. You are stepping into the moment where it connects. This is why the shift will feel sudden. Because what appears to happen in a moment has actually been in motion for far longer than you realize. Think about it: there will be a conversation that changes direction quickly. An opportunity that appears unexpectedly but fits perfectly. A door that opens without the resistance you are used to. And when it happens, it will feel almost too easy compared to what you have experienced before. That is when you must not hesitate. That is when you must not question it unnecessarily. Because the ease is not a mistake. It is a result of alignment. Archangel Michael speaks again, and his words carry urgency now. He says, do not slow down what is meant to move quickly. When the opening appears, move with it. This is critical. Because your past trained you to pause, to analyze, to protect yourself from disappointment. But your future requires you to recognize flow and move with confidence when it appears. And this is where your awareness becomes your advantage. You will notice that things begin to shift in clusters, not isolated events, but multiple changes happening around the same time. Momentum will build faster than you are used to. Progress will stack instead of trickle. And what once required force will begin to respond with cooperation. That is the sign. That is the confirmation. That you are no longer operating in the same cycle, But there is something else you must be prepared for. When things change quickly, it will also change how others perceive you. People who were used to seeing you in one position will suddenly see you in another. And not everyone will understand the speed of that shift. Some may question it. Some may doubt it. Some may try to interpret it through the lens of your past. But you must not adjust yourself to their understanding, because what is happening is not based on their perception. It is based on divine timing. Archangel Michael makes this clear. He says, "You do not need to explain acceleration to those who only understand delay. So remain grounded. Remain focused. Remain aligned with what you feel internally, not what others expect externally. Because this turnaround is not random. It is precise. It is the result of everything you have already endured, learned, and become. And now it is arriving in a form that will not require the same level of struggle to access. The effort was in the preparation. A manifestation will feel different. It will feel like things are finally working with you instead of against you. And when that happens, you will understand something deeply, that nothing you went through was wasted. It was all leading to a moment like this. A moment where everything begins to move and it does not stop. Archangel Michael speaks one final time in this section, and his voice carries certainty. The shift will not be slow. The change will not be partial. What begins will continue until it establishes itself fully in your life. So be ready, not just to receive but to move with what you receive. Because in the next section you will understand exactly what you must do to remain aligned with this transfer, and how your actions now determine how fully you step into it. Type "I am ready" for the sudden shift in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 6666 is now activated around your life. Now the moment becomes even more precise, because it is no longer just about what is happening, it is about how you respond to what is happening. You have been prepared. You have been aligned. You have been brought to this point intentionally. But now there is a responsibility, because a transfer can be initiated and still not be fully received. Not because it was taken away, but because it was not recognized, not aligned with, or not acted upon correctly. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and his presence carries a firm, unmistakable authority. This is not suggestion. This is instruction. He says what is being released must be received with awareness. You cannot enter this next season passively. And this is where your role becomes active. Because for a long time your role was endurance. You had to wait. You had to persist. You had to hold on when things were unclear. But now your role shifts from endurance to alignment. And alignment requires intention. The first shift you must make is internal. You must stop identifying with the version of yourself that struggled to maintain. Because if you continue to see yourself that way, you will unconsciously limit what you allow into your life. Archangel Michael says, you cannot carry abundance with the mindset that was formed in limitation. This is not about pretending. This is about recognizing that something has already changed and allowing your identity to reflect that change. You must begin to think from stability, not survival. You must begin to expect consistency, not interruption. You must begin to see opportunity instead of anticipating delay. And this is not something that happens automatically. It is something you choose repeatedly until it becomes natural. The second instruction is awareness of movement. Because what is coming will not always announce itself in obvious ways. It may come through ideas that seem simple at first. It may come through connections that feel ordinary at first. It may come through opportunities that do not look dramatic but carry potential. And if you are not paying attention, you may overlook what you once prayed for simply because it does not look the way you imagined. Archangel Michael makes this clear. He says, do not expect the answer to match your expectation. Recognize the answer by its alignment. This means you must stay present, not distracted by past disappointments, not consumed by future worries, but aware in real time of what is unfolding around you. Because recognition is part of reception. The third instruction is movement without hesitation. When alignment appears, you must move. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but confidently. Because hesitation in this season can slow down what is meant to flow. You have already developed discernment. You have already learned from your past. Now you must trust that development. Archangel Michael says, "You asked for clarity. Now that clarity is here, do not doubt it." This is where many people miss their moment. They wait for confirmation after confirmation until the moment passes. But this season requires a different response. When something aligns, you act. When something feels right, you move. When something opens, you step through. And as you do, more will open. The fourth instruction is protection of your environment. Because what you are stepping into must be sustained. And sustainability requires boundaries. You cannot return to environments that reinforce limitation. You cannot stay connected to conversations that diminish your vision. You cannot continue patterns that drain your focus. Archangel Michael speaks with clarity here. He says what you allow around you will influence what remains with you. So be selective, not from fear but from awareness. Because what you protect, you preserve. And what you preserve, you can grow. The fifth instruction is trust in the process of unfolding. Because even though things will move faster, not everything will appear at once. There will still be sequence. There will still be progression. But it will feel different, more fluid, more responsive, more aligned. And in that flow, you must not revert to doubt. Archangel Michael says, "You not question what is working simply because it is new. Let it unfold. Let it build. Let it establish itself without interference from old expectations. Because what is coming is not fragile. It is supported. It is structured. It is meant to remain. And now you stand in a position where everything depends on how you respond. Not in fear, not in pressure, but in awareness. Because the transfer is not something you chase. It is something you align with. And alignment is now in your hands." Archangel Michael speaks one final time in this section, and his voice carries certainty and direction. You have been prepared for this. You have been brought to this point intentionally. Now receive it fully by walking in alignment with what has already begun. So stay aware. Stay intentional. Stay aligned with what you feel rising within you. Because in the next section you will understand why this blessing is not just about receiving but about responsibility, and why what is coming requires a level of maturity that matches its magnitude. Type "I walk in alignment" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 7777 is now activated around your life. Now the message deepened, because what is coming is not just a reward, it is a responsibility. For so long, you have focused on receiving. You have prayed for increase, hoped for stability, believed for more. And rightfully so. But now, as the transfer begins to manifest, the question shifts from "will I receive it?" to something far more important: what will I do with it when it arrives? Archangel Michael steps forward again, and his presence carries a weight that demands your full attention. His voice is steady, unwavering, and filled with divine authority. He says, "What is being placed into your hands is not random provision. It is assigned stewardship." And that word stewardship changes how you must see everything that is coming. Because this is not just about wealth for comfort. It is about wealth with purpose. It is about resources that are meant to flow, not just accumulate. It is about responsibility that extends beyond your personal needs into something greater than yourself. And this is why your preparation was not only about endurance but about maturity. Because without maturity, increase becomes instability. Without discipline, abundance becomes loss. Without clarity, wealth becomes confusion. Archangel Michael reveals something critical in this moment. He shows that many people desire increase but few are prepared to manage it. And the difference between those who sustain wealth and those who lose it is not luck, it is stewardship. You have already been tested in small ways. How you handled limited resources. How you responded when things were uncertain. How you managed what you had even when it was not much. Those moments were not insignificant. They were indicators. Because how you handle little reveals how you will handle more. And now you are being elevated into a level where what you receive must be maintained with intention. This means your decisions will matter more. Your focus will matter more. Your discipline will matter more. Not because the blessing is fragile, but because it is valuable. Archangel Michael says, do not treat what is coming as temporary gain. Treat it as something that must be sustained and multiplied. And this is where your mindset must remain grounded. Because as things begin to improve, there will be a natural temptation to relax too quickly. To assume that because the struggle has ended, the effort is no longer required. But that is not the case. The struggle required endurance. The blessing requires management. And management is a different kind of discipline. It is not about surviving. It is about maintaining alignment consistently. This means being intentional with how you use what you receive. Being aware of where your energy goes. Being conscious of the decisions you make with your time, your resources, and your focus. Because everything you do with what you receive determines how it grows. Archangel Michael reveals another layer here. He shows that this transfer is not just for your benefit, it is connected to impact. There are things you will be able to do that you could not do before. There are opportunities you will be able to support that were once out of reach. There are ways you will be able to contribute that extend beyond your personal life. And that is part of the assignment. Because true abundance is not measured by what you keep. It is measured by what flows through you. And this is why your maturity matters. Because when you understand that what you have is not just for you, you begin to move differently. You become more intentional, more aware, more aligned with purpose. Archangel Michael speaks again, and his words carry clarity. You are not being given more to prove something to others. You are being given more to fulfill what has been placed within you. So stay grounded. Stay disciplined. Stay aware of the responsibility that comes with what you are receiving. Because this is not a temporary moment. This is a shift into a new level of living, one that must be sustained through conscious action. And as you move with that awareness, the increase will not only remain, it will expand. Because what is managed well grows. And what grows creates even greater opportunity. Archangel Michael speaks one final time in this section, and his voice carries both assurance and instruction. What you are about to receive is stable if you remain aligned. It is lasting if you remain aware. It is multiplying if you remain disciplined. So understand this clearly: you are not just stepping into wealth. You are stepping into responsibility. And your ability to carry that responsibility is what will determine how far this blessing goes. Because what begins now is meant to continue. And in the next section you will understand why certain people cannot go with you into this next level, and why separation is not loss but necessary alignment. Type "I am ready to steward my blessings" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 8888 is now activated around your life. And as this truth settles into your spirit, hear this clearly: every seed you release becomes a channel through which this same light reaches someone still walking in darkness. This mission is not about a platform. It is about awakening souls, one message at a time, one life at a time. The word declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you." And in this very moment, that promise is alive, calling you into action. I feel the prompting within. This is your moment to respond, not later, not eventually, but now. When you support through Super Thanks with a PayPal link in the description or QR code on your screen, you are not donating. You are activating a flow that multiplies beyond what you can see. Your giving becomes a seed that opens doors, restores hope, and releases truth into lives that need it. So step into this prophetic moment. Act with intention. So now and become part of what heaven is doing through this message. There is a truth you are stepping into now that may feel heavy at first, but it is necessary for you to fully receive what is coming. Because as this shift unfolds, as this transfer begins to establish itself in your life, not everything and not everyone will be able to move forward with you. And this is not punishment. This is alignment. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and his presence carries a calm but unshakable authority. He says, "Elevation always reveals what is not aligned with it, and what is not aligned cannot remain." And this is where clarity begins to replace confusion. Because if you reflect honestly, you have already felt this shift beginning. Certain conversations no longer feel the same. Certain environments no longer hold the same comfort. Certain connections that once felt natural now feel forced. And at first you may have questioned yourself. You may have wondered if you were changing too much. If you were becoming distant. If you were someone disconnecting unnecessarily. But now you are being shown the truth. You are not becoming distant. You are becoming aligned. And alignment naturally creates separation from what does not match it. Archangel Michael reveals something deeper here. He shows that every level of your life requires a different environment to sustain it. What supported you in one season may not support you in the next. What felt normal before may now feel limiting. And that is not because something is wrong. It is because something has changed. You have changed. Your awareness has expanded. Your perspective has shifted. Your capacity has increased. And because of that, your environment must reflect that shift. But here is where it becomes challenging. Not everyone around you will understand this change. Some will interpret it as distance. Some will see it as rejection. Some will question why you are no longer the same. And this is where you must remain grounded in truth. Because their perception does not define your alignment. Archangel Michael speaks with clarity. He says, "Do not reduce your alignment to maintain what was only meant for a previous season." This is critical. Because there will be moments where you feel the pull to stay connected in the same way to maintain familiarity to avoid discomfort. But that pull, if followed, will slow down what is trying to move forward in your life. Because what is coming requires space. Space for new connections. Space for new opportunities. Space for new environments that match your level. And that space cannot exist if it is still occupied by what no longer aligns. This does not mean conflict. This does not mean forceful separation. It means natural distance. It means allowing things to shift without resistance. It means recognizing that not every connection is meant to continue in the same form. Archangel Michael reveals another truth in this moment. He shows that some people were connected to your process but not to your outcome. They were present during your struggle. They were a part of your learning. They shared space with you when things were different. But they are not aligned with where you are going. And that does not make them wrong. It simply means their role has been fulfilled. And now your path continues in a different direction. This is why you must release without resentment. Because holding on to what has completed its purpose creates resistance within you. and resistance slows down alignment. Archangel Michael says, release with clarity, not with emotion, not with conflict, but with understanding. Because when you release from a place of understanding, you remain in peace, and peace keeps you aligned. But there is something else you must be aware of as you step into this next level. New connections will begin to appear. People who think differently, people who operate differently, people who are aligned with growth, expansion, and stability. And these connections will feel different. Not forced, not complicated, not draining, but natural. Because alignment creates ease. And when you experience that, you will understand why the previous connections could not continue in the same way. Because what you are stepping into requires support that matches it. It requires environments that sustain it. It requires relationships that align with it. And now you are being positioned into that alignment. Archangel Michael speaks one final time in this section, and his voice carries calm certainty. Do not fear separation. It is not taking anything from you. It is making room for what belongs with you. So trust the shift. Trust what you feel changing. Trust the distance that is forming without force. Because it is not loss. It is preparation. And in the next section you will begin to recognize the signs that confirm this transfer has already begun to manifest in your life even before it fully appears. Type "I trust the alignment" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 9999 is now activated around your life. There comes a moment in every divine shift where what was once unseen begins to leave traces. Not the full manifestation, yet not the complete picture, but signs. Subtle at first, then undeniable. And you are entering that moment now. Because what has already begun in the spiritual realm will not remain hidden forever. It will start to echo into your physical reality in ways that catch your attention, in ways that feel too aligned to ignore. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and his presence is steady, observant, and precise. He says, you will not be left without confirmation. What has begun will reveal itself in patterns, not just moments. And this is where your awareness becomes even more important. Because the signs will not always look dramatic. They will not always arrive as one overwhelming breakthrough. Instead, they will begin as shifts. Small at first, but consistent. You may notice that things begin to move differently. Situations that once felt stuck begin to resolve with less resistance. Conversations that once felt tense begin to flow with unexpected ease. Outcomes that once required force begin to align naturally. And at first you may question it. You may wonder if it is temporary. You may hesitate to trust it fully. You may wait for something to go wrong because that is what you have been conditioned to expect. But this time it is different. Because this is not random improvement. This is confirmation of a deeper shift. Archangel Michael reveals something critical here. He shows that confirmation often comes through repetition. Not a single sign, but multiple signs pointing in the same direction. You may hear the same idea from different places. You may encounter similar opportunities in unexpected ways. You may receive clarity on something you have been uncertain about without searching for it. And when those patterns begin to form, that is your signal. Not coincidence. Alignment. Michael says, when the same direction appears more than once, it is no longer chance. It is guidance. And this is where you must begin to trust what you are seeing. Because the signs are not meant to confuse you. They are meant to confirm that you are moving correctly. But there is another layer to this. Some of the confirmation will come from within you. Not external events. Internal clarity. You will notice that your thinking becomes sharper. Decisions that once felt complicated become simple. Doubt that once lingered begins to fade. You start to feel a quiet confidence not based on proof but based on knowing. And that knowing is one of the strongest confirmations you can receive. Because it does not come from circumstances. It comes from alignment. Archangel Michael says, when your mind becomes clear without external validation, it is because your spirit has already aligned with what is coming. So do not ignore that internal shift. Do not dismiss the calm certainty that begins to replace confusion, because that is part of the manifestation process. But there is something else you must be aware of. As the signs begin to appear, there will also be moments of contrast. Moments where you see clearly what no longer aligns. Situations that once felt acceptable will now feel out of place. Decisions that once seemed normal will now feel misaligned. You will begin to recognize instantly what fits and what does not. This is also confirmation. Because clarity does not only show you what to move toward, it also shows you what to move away from. And as you follow that clarity, the alignment strengthens. Archangel Michael reveals one more truth in this moment. He says, the signs are not meant to convince you. They are meant to confirm what has already begun. Which means you are not waiting for proof to believe. You are recognizing proof because you already believe. And that shift from waiting to recognizing is what accelerates everything. Because once you begin to see the signs clearly, you respond differently. You move with confidence. You act with certainty. You stop second-guessing what is unfolding. And as you do, the manifestation becomes more visible, more consistent, more undeniable, until it is no longer something you are watching for, it is something you are living in. Archangel Michael speaks one final time in this section, and his voice carries calm assurance. You will know it has begun not by one moment but by the consistency of alignment. What once resisted you will begin to respond to you. So stay aware. Stay present. Stay open to what is unfolding both around you and within you. Because the signs are already forming, and they will only become clear from here. And in the next section you will see what your life will look like once this transfer fully establishes itself, and how everything begins to stabilize, expand, and flow in a way you have never experienced before. Type "I recognize the signs" in the comments if you receive this message. Lesson code 1010 is now activated around your life. There is a vision forming now, not imagined, not exaggerated, but revealed. Because what you are stepping into is not just a moment of increase, it is a new state of living. A reality that will feel unfamiliar at first, not because it is unnatural, but because it is something you have not experienced consistently before. Archangel Michael steps forward again, and his presence carries a calm certainty, as if what he is about to reveal is already established. He says, you have seen life through limitation. Now you will see life through overflow. And that shifted changes everything. Because for so long, your decisions were shaped by caution. You measured what you could afford. You calculated what was possible. You adjusted your expectations based on what seemed available. And that way of thinking, it served you in the season you were in. But it will not define the season you are entering. Because overflow does not operate from restriction. It operates from stability. It operates from consistency. It operates from a level where you are no longer trying to maintain, but able to expand. And this is where your life begins to look different in ways that are both visible and internal. Externally, things begin to settle. Not in a stagnant way, but in a stable way. The constant pressure you once felt begins to lift. The uncertainty that followed your decisions begins to fade. The need to constantly anticipate problems begins to disappear. And in its place there is structure. There is rhythm. There is flow. Archangel Michael reveals this clearly. He shows that your environment begins to reflect your alignment. Opportunities become more consistent. Resources become more reliable. What once felt unpredictable becomes dependable, and that consistency is one of the greatest forms of abundance, because it allows you to plan without fear. It allows you to move without hesitation. It allows you to think beyond the immediate and begin to build something lasting. But the shift is not only external. Internally, something even more significant happens. You begin to feel different. Not in a temporary way, but in a grounded way. The anxiety that once accompanied uncertainty begins to dissolve. The doubt that once interrupted your confidence becomes quiet. The constant need to question whether things will work out is replaced with a steady sense that they will. And that internal stability becomes your new foundation. Archangel Michael says, overflow is not just what you have, it is how you feel while you have it. Because true abundance is not only measured by resources, it is measured by peace. It is measured by clarity. It is measured by the absence of constant pressure. And that is what you are stepping into. But there is something else that begins to emerge in this new season expansion. Because once stability is established, growth becomes natural. You begin to see possibilities where you once saw limits. You begin to consider ideas that once felt out of reach. You begin to move in ways that are not restricted by fear but guided by vision. And that vision starts to unfold. Not all at once but consistently. Archangel Michael reveals that what you build in this season will not feel forced. It will feel aligned. It will feel supported. It will feel like things are finally moving in the direction you always sensed was possible but could not fully access before. And as that happens, your relationship with money, opportunity, and growth changes. You no longer see it as something that comes and goes. You see it as something that can be sustained. You begin to manage it with clarity. You begin to direct it with intention. You begin to use it as a tool, not just a necessity. And that shift is what allows overflow to continue. Because what is understood is maintained. And what is maintained can expand. Archangel Michael speaks again, and his voice carries a calm assurance. This is not a temporary rise. This is a new level of living. What you are stepping into is meant to remain. So as this begins to unfold, you will notice the difference. Not in one dramatic moment, but in the consistency of improvement. Things working more often than not. Opportunities aligning without constant resistance. Decisions leading to results that reinforce your direction. And over time it becomes your normal. Not something you hope for. And not something you question. But something you live in. And when you reach that point, you will understand something deeply, that everything you went through was leading to this. A life that is not defined by struggle but supported by stability. A life that is not limited by uncertainty but guided by clarity. A life that is not focused on surviving but positioned to expand. Archangel Michael speaks one final time in this section, and his words carry quiet certainty. You will not return to what you have left behind. What is established now will continue to grow. So receive this vision. Hold it with clarity. Allow yourself to step into it fully without hesitation. Because in the final section you will be given the prophetic charge, the moment where everything comes together and you are called to fully step into what has already been released over your life. Type "I step into overflow" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1110 is now activated around your life. This is the moment where everything comes together, not as theory, not as possibility, but as decision. Because everything that has been revealed, everything that has been prepared, everything that has already begun now leads to one final point of alignment. Your awareness. Your acceptance, your willingness to step fully into what has been released. Archangel Michael steps forward one last time, and his presence is unmistakable. There is no more explanation. of unfulfilled. Only declaration. His voice carries the authority of completion, and he says the season has changed. The transfer is active. Now you must step into it. And that instruction, it is not symbolic, is immediate. Because there is a difference between something being available and something being received. And right now it is available. But you must receive it with clarity. You must receive it without hesitation. You must receive it without returning to the mindset that belonged to your past. Because the only thing that can delay what is already in motion is your refusal to fully step into it. And this is where many stand at the threshold but do not cross. They wait for more proof. They wait for perfect conditions. They wait until everything feels completely certain. But this moment does not require waiting. It requires movement. Archangel Michael says, "You have already been shown enough. You have already been prepared enough. Now you must act as the one who has received." That means your posture changes. You no longer think like someone hoping for change. You think like someone who knows it has already begun. You no longer move cautiously out of fear. You move intentionally with awareness. You no longer question whether you are ready. You recognize that readiness has already been established. And this is where your transformation becomes visible. Because the moment you step into this awareness, your actions begin to reflect it. Your decisions become more certain. Your responses become more aligned. Your presence becomes more grounded. And as that happens, what is already moving toward you begins to connect fully. Because alignment is not passive. It is active participation in what has already been set in motion. Archangel Michael reveals one final truth in this moment. He says, this is not just a blessing. This is a transition into who you were always meant to become. And that is what makes this moment so significant. Because this is not just about wealth. This is about identity. This is about stepping into a version of yourself that no longer operates from limitation but from clarity, stability, and purpose. And once you step into that, there is no returning. Because awareness once activated does not reverse. So now you stand at the threshold, not waiting, not wondering, but choosing. Choosing to receive. Choosing to align. Choosing to move forward without carrying what has already ended. Archangel Michael speaks one final time, and his voice carries absolute certainty. The transfer is not coming. It is here. The question is not whether it will happen. The question is whether you will step into it fully now. To step, without hesitation, without doubt, without looking back. Because what has been prepared for you is already aligned with who you have become. And this moment, this exact moment, is where it begins to fully establish itself in your life. Type "I receive IT" now in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1212 is now activated around your life. And as you stand in this moment of divine activation, understand this: every seed you release becomes a light that reaches another soul standing at the edge of their own breakthrough. This mission is not about content. It is about calling, about igniting truth in hearts that are still searching for direction. The word declares, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." And right now, that promise is alive, calling you into action. I feel this strongly. This is your moment to respond, not as an observer, but as a participant in what heaven is doing. When you give through Super Thanks or through the PayPal link in the description or QR code on your screen, you are not simply supporting. You are sowing into a movement that awakens, restores, and transforms lives. And as you release your seed, know this with certainty: it returns to you multiplied, opening doors and aligning opportunities beyond what you can see. So act now. Step into obedience. So into this moment and become part of the divine flow that is changing lives.